Hello, welcome to the Eurogamer Expo Developer Sessions. A little bit of housekeeping before we start. No filming during this session, please. We will be watching. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to James Russell from Creative Assembly, who's going to be talking to you about Rome 2.
Hi there. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, great. So, yeah, my name's James Russell. I'm the lead designer for the Total War series at Creative Assembly. And today I want to talk briefly about our latest project in development, which we recently announced, which is Total War Rome 2. And I also want to share some of the crazy lengths that we have to go to make a video game on this kind of scale these days. And of course, we're also, with Al's help over there, going to show you some live code of Rome 2 running our Siege of Carthage historical battle. And at the end, hopefully, we'll have time for some questions. So why are we doing Rome 2? Well, by the time we release Rome 2, it's going to be 9 years since the release of original Rome. So that's a long time, nearly a decade. And it's definitely the kind of most requested title from us. All the fans, all the players wanted us to make Rome 2. It's the game that we want to make. The development team's really, really excited to be working on this massive game project. And we're determined to make Rome 2 the best Total War game we've ever made. And I think, the ancient world really is the ultimate empire-building era. You could argue that Rome itself was history's first great superpower. And I think there's something uniquely evocative about the look and feel of Rome and her legions. And I think that's part of the enduring appeal of the era in so much popular culture. And the setting certainly has all of the ingredients that we look for when we think about what we need to make a Total War game. So it's got loads of cool content. It's got a really unpredictable starting situation where anything could have happened. And of course, it's got lots of progression in terms of technology and tactics throughout the time period. And those are the things that we look for. So for those not super familiar with some of the features that we've been talking about for Rome 2, I'll briefly outline what we're planning. Now, the defining feature of the Total War series really is this combination of grand-scale empire-building strategy, which is the campaign map, combined with realistic massed battles on a huge scale in our 3D battle engine. It's that combination that's unique to the series. And what we're doing on the campaign map is we're going to upgrade all the core features, really, right? So we're going to change how you develop your cities, how you control your armies and your navies, how you build and defend trade routes, how you conduct diplomacy, how you research technology, and how you manage your empire, right? All these things are going to get a complete upgrade. And we're making a world that is significantly larger than the campaign map in original Rome. So we've got an evocative ancient world setting with just a huge variety of different cultures, different fighting styles, different environments. And you've got barbarian tribes in the northern forests. You've got exotic kingdoms in the eastern deserts. And of course, you've got Rome itself. You've got political intrigue and rivalry. You've got machinations of the Senate. We really want to weave these human-level storylines and dramas into the gameplay. And we want the player to be thinking things like, do I save the Republic? Do I make a play to become emperor? Because this time was all about the personal decisions of legendary figures like Julius Caesar and Cleopatra, changing history. They forged empires with their own personal decisions. And so this is what we mean by the idea of Total War with a human face. In a game of statecraft. It's about taking immersion at that human level to the next stage in terms of this, what is a game of statecraft. Now, when armies clash on the campaign map, you go down and you fight a battle in our massively upgraded 3D battle engine. And on the battlefield, I think what's unique about the Total War series is this spectrum of scale that you've got, right? You zoom in and you see individuals fighting their guts out really close up, brutal combat, and then you zoom out and you see it played out across thousands and thousands of soldiers on a massive scale. And in Rome 2, what we want to do is push both ends of that spectrum. So at the large scale, we've got things like epic city environments with multiple capture points. Now, previously in Rome, we just had a single kind of plaza. So multiple capture points really changes the gameplay inside the city streets. We've got combined battles. So you're going to see, we're breaking down the boundaries between armies and navies. So you're going to see ships with units that disembark, fight on land. You're going to see shipborne artillery bombarding cities. And ships themselves, navies will be composed of units that have multiple ships in them. And that really adds to the sense of scale. So, you know, we're really pushing that sense of epic scale, and we've got a massively enhanced graphics engine, we've got new lighting systems, new particle systems, and you'll see some of the embryonic progress that we've made in that. And close up, we really want to take it to the next level as well. So we want the men to feel more human, more lifelike, more real. So we're putting in things like facial animations, emotional interactions. So, you know, we don't want the men to feel like robots. If a guy dies next to me or takes an arrow shot, I'm going to react to that. Right? That's all about really getting the men to feel more human. And we're wanting to put unit link cameras down in the action to really make you feel like you're in the battlefield, that you're really there. We want combat to feel really much more brutal and more visceral than we've done before. We really want to get that sense of the kind of Roman meat grinder style. And I'll show you a little bit about how we're doing that. But this is part of a darker vision of war. This is what we mean by the idea of total war with a human face on the battlefield. And I think you reinforce that human level stuff with the epic scale. And I think you can see that our goal for Rome 2 is to deliver some of the most spectacular sights you've ever seen in a computer game. And I think we've still got a year of hard work, and I think we can deliver that by the time we release. But I also want to give you some sense of some of the work we're doing to make Rome 2 so special, and at the same time give you a little bit of an insight into the strange world of making games. Because, a video game, any video game, is an amazing thing, right? Games are arguably the most sophisticated and complex forms of software out there these days. And, the source code, a lot goes into it. Now, the source code itself for Rome 2 is so far getting on towards 3 million lines of code. So if you stack screens up, you'd have to get roughly to 5 times the height of Mount Everest before you can display the whole source code in a list there. But of course, code is not content, right? Code is just instructions. And the code needs data. It needs assets like models, textures, sounds, and it also needs design parameters to steer how the code works. So, there's a ton of stuff to do here. And, I could keep expanding this out to show you. I mean, there's just thousands upon thousands of tasks. And we've got over 100 people working on the game. It's a huge amount of effort. And, of course, before we even start the development process, we have to, we have to design the game. We have to design how we want each of these elements to behave. Now, an analogy that we like to use is that designing a game is, in some ways, a little bit like designing a bridge. So a great, elegant design combines beautiful form with robust function. Now, anyone who's seen a picture, anyone who's ever seen a bridge can draw a picture of a bridge and call it a design, right? And it may even look good. But to actually make something, to actually create a working and effective construction, you need a huge amount of design engineering, right, underneath that. So to give you a very, very quick glimpse of the game, this is what it looks like on the surface, and we'll show you it in more detail in a moment. But this is what the player sees, right? Obviously, that's not what the player hears because this doesn't have any audio in it. But this is the surface level. This is what the player sees. But what's involved with actually making that happen? Well, if we take a look at the wiring under the floor, this is what Rome 2 looks like with all that display artifice stripped away. So the men are those little gray cylinders there in unit groups. And under the hood, what the code's doing here is it's controlling each man's position and state. It's calculating paths for every unit and for every man within each unit across all these thousands of men. It's plotting the course of thousands of projectiles. That's what those little red trails that you saw there, that's what those are. They're arrow trails there. It's constantly analyzing and resolving collisions between many different classes of objects. And it's also processing thousands of attacks, thousands of combat attacks happening at the same time. And of course, it's doing much, much more than this. Those yellow lines there is the building logic, which all has to get collision checked to make sure that arrows aren't intersecting it and so on. And that's not even mentioning the graphics code, right? the graphics code's calculating how light from different sources is hitting different surfaces at different angles for millions upon millions of seething polygons. It's processing where shadows are and what type of surfaces and angles they're falling on. And it's triangulating all this into a single frame to display on your monitor, depending on where the camera is. And of course, it's doing that many, many times a second. So, each one of those units that you saw has hundreds of design parameters. And that's not just the unit stats that the player sees, things like armor and attack and defense. The designer also has to specify loads of other properties, like, for instance, the spacing between the men in different formations, the officer types, the running speeds, the acceleration on different terrains. So with over 100 parameters for each unit and many hundreds of units, that actually makes tens of thousands of data items that the designer has to enter and balance and specify to really shape how the units behave. So it's a hell of a lot of work. So we have lots of meetings to discuss some of the relationships between these numbers. And actually, this is one of my favorite questions that I ask when I'm interviewing prospective designers for a job. It's a simple question about bonuses. And I ask, what are the implications of using an additive bonus versus a multiplier bonus, right? So what I mean by that is, if I'm above the enemy that I'm attacking, should the height advantage give me, I don't know, a +2 bonus to my attack, or should it give me a +20% bonus to my existing attack stat? Now, a fixed bonus obviously means that it's going to have a much bigger effect on weaker units. I'm not trying to say there's a right answer, right? This is the kind of thing that we discuss every day. As designers, we have to design how we want the system to behave, because the implications there are severe gameplay implications depending on the choice that we make. This is the kind of thing that is fundamental to understanding this is the kind of thing that's fundamental to being a hardcore player, let alone a professional designer. Another example of how we need to think about the numbers as designers, we can plot things like unit cost against unit power. So, and it might look like something like this. So the more expensive units tend to be more powerful. That's all good. We can plot a line for that. Okay. And we can say, well, maybe that unit above the line is overpowered, right? It's more powerful than its cost in the game would suggest. Maybe the unit below the line is underpowered. It's cheaper. It's less powerful, rather, than its cost would suggest. Now, that's fine, but as designers, we need to think about how we want that curve to look. Do we want a straight line? Maybe we want diminishing returns to help balance the end game, right? To make it a bit harder to get really powerful units. But maybe we want the opposite. Maybe we want an increasing return. Now, why might we want that? Well, in reality, it takes a lot of investment to get high-level units into the battlefield, right? It's not just the money. You've got to have high-level buildings. You've got to have high-level technologies. So that's why we might want an increasing return, to give the player a reward for that. But more importantly, if you have a diminishing return, why wouldn't a rich player that's got lots of money in the game, he would just build lots and lots of cheap units, and that's his way of getting the most power onto the battlefield. So there's not necessarily a right answer here. I'm just showing you the kinds of things that we have to think about as designers. But that's just the numbers. There's a lot more changing that bare bones framework I showed you to the finished product. And for battles, obviously, a big chunk of that work is actually making the thousands of soldiers that you see fighting. So to make a soldier, what the artists do is they create the 3D geometry, and then they create the textures, the color surfaces that get wrapped around that geometry to make the final model. And the textures look a bit weird because they're not normal sort of projections of 3D objects onto 2D that we're used to seeing. They've got to get wrapped around the circumference of the head there. And you can get some pretty weird results if you make mistakes mapping the texture to the geometry, as you can see from this rather weird bug from Shogun 2, which is quite hideous. But there you can see the guy's face is completely mapped onto the wrong part of the geometry all over his back, and it's quite disturbing. So if we take a little look at this process, so this is a time-lapse capture of one of our artists constructing a helmet for the game. And as you can see, she's putting a hell of a lot of effort into just this one piece, and this is brutally edited down. But we've got over 1,000 pieces like that in the game. And so the little slideshow on the right there shows just a snapshot of some of the objects, some of the parts that the art team have been working on. So in Rome 2, each one of these characters, each full soldier is made up of around 6,000 or 7,000 polygons. And to give you a bit of context, in Shogun 2, they're made up of about 4,000 to 5,000 polygons. In Empire, only 2,000 polygons. So we're about nearly 3 to 4 times as much visual fidelity as we had in Empire. And don't forget, we've got thousands of these soldiers on screen at the same time. In fact, in Rome 2, we actually have artillery projectiles with more polygons than a full soldier in original Rome. So you can see how far things have come on over the years. But of course, once you've got those soldiers, you've got to animate them, right? So the animators, what they do is they rig the animation data onto this custom-built skeleton, which is made up of about 45 bones or 45 moving parts. And then that skeleton is attached to a 3D model to drive its movement in the game. So how do we get that animation data? Well, most of it comes from motion capture, or mocap for short. Now, motion capture is the process of recording an actor's movements to attach them to a character model in the game. And these actors have to wear special suits with highlighted points on specific body parts for the cameras to track. Now, in Shogun 2, we just had 16 cameras, right? But this little video shows off our new motion capture facility, which actually has 46 cameras. There is a bit of audio in that. So these are sort of professional actors, professional stuntmen. So we've got 46 cameras here capturing their motion, which actually makes this facility one of the biggest game developer studio-owned motion capture facilities in Europe. So that facility can actually record up to 5 actors moving simultaneously. So it's really, really important to put it to good use. And we've got a couple of guys at the studio who make a great series of community videos called Rally Point, which you can check out on YouTube if you haven't. And we gave those guys free use of this new state-of-the-art mocap facility for the afternoon to show the player community how mocap worked. And this is what they did. I apologize. It's shocking. This is how they demonstrate our new facility. Now, if we're unlucky, some of this might end up in the game. I hope not. Sigh. That's all I can say. So these are not what I just showed you there. These are some of the animations that we've got in the bag so far. And as I said, what we really want to do is move away from some of the fancy sword play in Shogun 2 and have a more kind of brutal, visceral style of combat for Rome. We want to create a real sense of impact and weight behind the animations. I hope you can see what we're trying to do there. I think this is my personal favorite coming up, which is quite brutal. Ouch. Let's see that again. Ow. Yeah, that's quite nasty. So, of course, we've got a lot of animations to do with animals as well. We've got a lot of different fighting creatures in the game. So not just horses, but we've also got camels and elephants. And actually, the logistics of doing motion capture for charging war elephants can be a little bit of a challenge. So generally, the animal animations are actually hand-keyed from scratch rather than motion captured. Now, any errors in that rigging process that I talked about, any errors in rigging up the skeletons to the models can produce some quite freaky results. And this is I think it's a camel that's, been rigged up very wrongly. To me, it just looks like it's saying, "I want to die." That's not good. Also, you can get errors when you're actually making the models too. So there's another example where the actual cloth material over the men's bodies wasn't rigged up quite right. So you can see some. This is very early, but you can see some serious problems here. Yes, we call this the bum bug. Yeah. So I think we fixed that now, so hopefully it won't be in any of the code that Al's going to show us. So look, with 4,000 animations, which is what we've got planned for the game, there's a lot of complex code to control where and when each of the animations plays on all the thousands of soldiers that we've got in battle. And this diagram just shows you the complexity of the linkage rules that govern how each animation is linked to each other animation via so-called transition animations, right? So a transition animation, imagine if you've got a model doing a walk animation, right? And then you order it to run. Now, it would look really bad if it popped immediately into a full, that's not a very good attempt at a full run animation, but if it popped immediately into a full run animation, it would look pretty bad. And I'm not just talking about gradual acceleration of the movement. You've actually got to have like a special walk to run animation. You've got to have a run to stop animation. And this shows you the complexity of how we have, how we have to link up in the code all these different animations to each other. It's a lot of effort. But sight is only one part of this. Sound is critical too, and sound is really, really important in terms of delivering immersion and emotion in the game. So, and our audio guys put enormous effort into making the game soundscape. They sample tens of thousands of different sound effects. So this might sound just like an army marching along and fighting. But we actually have thousands of samples just for movement sounds. So for running, for walking, for turning, on grass, on gravel, on sand, on mud, on rock, on undergrowth, on wood. And we have different sets altogether if the weather's dry versus wet, or if it's snowing. And we've got obviously different sets for all the different animals in the game. So it's a massive amount. We've got over 2,000 impact sounds. So arrows sound different when they hit rock or all the different surfaces, wood, rock, men, even tree foliage. There's special sound effects. And of course, we've got lots of different weapon combinations as well. So and we don't just have one sound for each of these things. There are dozens of samples. So this is just sword v sword. Loads of different sounds. And then, of course, we've got different types of sword, not just one type. Should be coming up. There, that's a different kind of sword. Quite therapeutic. We got thousands of different vocalizations in the game. I wonder if anybody can guess what this is. Anybody like to hazard a guess? No, it's a camel. Yeah, not just an idle camel. That's a camel being injured. I wonder if anybody can guess what this is. Catapult, that's it. It's a catapult being pulled back. Very good. I think that's enough catapults. So this is actually how we go about capturing some of these sounds. And this is recorded at Pinewood Studios just last week. Destroying some Roman armor there, getting some glancing blow sounds, then some armor penetration sounds. So this is all being recorded in the studio. And these guys, they put a lot of effort into it. They really suffer for their art, as you'll see in a second. He's really suffering, but the guy on the right looks like he's having a great time. Yes, that is suffering for your art. Of course, when you play the game, right, the sounds feel like they're coming from somewhere. So the game needs to know where in 3D space to play each sound sample, and much of that is actually done by linking sound events to animations. So what you can see here is just a bit of capture of the guy actually marking there the elephant's foot. And actually, when the foot lands in that animation, attaching a specific sound file for the footstep, like the elephant footstep. And, we go to great lengths to make sure that this all works. And some of the more complex animations, some of the matched combat animations have loads of different sound effects, which you'll see. So the location of the animating model in the battlefield and the location of that sound event within the animation space combines to create the 3D point at which the sound is played by the code. And we need to do all of that to make it sound convincing as you're moving your camera through this thick melee. We want to make sure that it sounds absolutely convincing and immersive. And of course, there's music, right? That's just sound effects. There's music. All our music is specially composed for the game and for the specific historical setting, and it gets played and recorded by full orchestras. So, I hope that's giving you a bit of a sense of how much is going into Rome 2. And of course, we've only just scratched the surface. I could go on all day. I mean, I could talk about all sorts of things like the effort that goes into making the environments and the buildings for all the different types of cities, barbarian settlements and eastern settlements. I haven't even mentioned things like the vast array of text that needs to be written for the game. So it's actually over 500,000 words, so that's well over the size of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, right? And a lot of that gets recorded as spoken voiceover by up to 100 different actors. So it's a massive effort. And that's just the English language version. This all gets translated and re-recorded in lots of different languages. So, and I haven't even touched on the campaign game either, right? That's just the battles we're talking about. So the scope and variety of the Roman world is all part of what makes this such a massive project, what makes this such an epically expensive game for us to be developing. But we're really, really excited about what we're doing. Cool. So, just before we just have a bit of time for Q&A, I just wanted to say two things. First of all, we're hiring like crazy at the moment. So please, if you're interested in learning more about getting into the games industry, or if you already are and thinking about joining us, that would be great. We've got a recruitment booth in the careers area. So come and visit. We're just there, and we've got a couple of guys from the development team there as well today. So please come along. And the other thing to mention is actually, I think just gone out today is our assembly kit, on the Steam tools. So now you can mod Shogun 2 to your heart's content. It's really, really useful stuff. So that's just two things I wanted to say. So have we got time for a Q&A?
Yes, we have time for a couple of questions. So where are we at, Bex? Okay. Chap over here.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi. It's a lovely game. My question is, how many factions would you be putting into the game and will all be unlockable? The one thing I didn't like about Rome, the first one, was that some of them were not allowed, were not playable.
Right. Okay. So yeah, in Rome 1, you could only play as Rome, and you had to destroy a faction, defeat a faction in order to be able to play as that faction. So in Rome 2, we're not going to be doing that, right? All the playable factions will be unlocked for you to play at the beginning. So I think that's a big thing. But obviously, we're going to have many more different types of factions in the game. We haven't confirmed the exact number of playable factions that we're going to have, but they'll absolutely all be unlocked right from the start.
Over here.
Hi.
Hi.
Previously, some of your games have required for PCs to be at their absolute maximum when they've come out. So for people who obviously can't afford to upgrade their PCs every time one of your games comes out, how will Total War 2, Rome 2 vary in this?
Well, I think we understand that gaming is changing. A lot of people want to play games, big games on their laptops. So what we are determined to do is try and have our cake and eat it, right? So our goal is to keep the minimum spec for Rome 2 the same as it was for Shogun 2. So that's our intention, is to not let the minimum spec creep up. But at the same time, we obviously want to make a game that takes advantage of all of the new features of new graphics cards and so on. So we basically want to make sure that the game scales. So you don't have to have a massive rig to play it, but if you do have a massive rig, it's going to look amazing. So that's what we want to do.
Okay, there's one here in the middle.
Well, I can't.
Yeah, all right. I know it's a bit early for how the Legion system works, but what would the unit limit be?
You mean how many units are we going to have in an army?
That's what I want to know. Yeah.
Right. Well, we're not necessarily planning on changing that. But yeah, the Legion system is part of this idea that we want the player to be focused on, you know, what a Roman emperor is focused on, right? Where's the 10th Legion? It's just been in battle. We need to bring up the 8th Legion to support it. So we want the player to be thinking about where their legions are rather than, you know, micromanaging, you know, this unit of archers combining with this unit of cavalry. Although, of course, you know, again, we want a player that wants to get down into all that detail to be able to do that. But fundamentally, we want to bind those units into this idea of a legion. So we've got things like a legion having a character, a history of its own, beyond what just its general. But we're not necessarily planning on making the unit scale bigger. I think we achieve our sense of scale in battles by doing other things than just having more and more units. Although, you know, we obviously will have thousands and thousands of men in the battle.
Cool, we've got time for a couple more. Who we got next then? One in the centre here.
Is that me? Oh, cool. I heard previously that they didn't come to consoles because it was a tech problem rather than control. So with new systems coming up soon, do you have dev kits? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I think certainly, yeah, the memory requirements would make it quite challenging to do Total War on a console. You know, I think the control issues are not to be underestimated. You know, it's not necessarily the main problem. But I think, you know, for us, if we did ever do anything on console, we wouldn't want to just do a port of what we're doing on PC because, you know, the experience is different. You know, we're about a really deep, immersive kind of lean-in experience rather than, you know, a kind of living room experience with shorter play sessions. So, you know, I think the bottom line is when we think about new platforms, we don't think about porting. We think about making the game for that platform. So, you know, our plan for Rome 2 is that it's PC exclusive.
Cool. Last question over here. Thank you.
Hello. When I was playing Rome 1, I noticed you could do custom games and against different factions. Just wondering if that's actually going to happen in this series against the AI. Can you still try and customize the game right down to the dot? Because I noticed in Rome 1 there was quite a lot of customization.
Are you talking about custom battles and playing custom battles? Yeah. No, we're absolutely. You know, you'll be able to play custom battles. You'll be able to set up your own battles. And in fact, you know, the assembly kit that we've released on Steam Tools is actually for Shogun 2 going to allow you to not just create custom battles, but actually build your own historical battles that you can then share with other people. So actually a lot more functionality than just a sort of standard custom battle.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
Cool.
Cool. Thank you very much, everyone, and thanks again to James.
Thank you.